Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics! Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. The streets of the city are getting dangerous. That's why I mainly stick to the woods. But if you're feeling braver than some and are fighting the urge to paint the town red, struggle no longer. Settle in by the glow of your monitor screens and prepare to see the darker side of justice with a little tale that I like to call All the World a Stage.
I guess it all started with my relationship with my father. My dad worked very hard to provide for his family. Dad worked at a local meat packing plant, a few miles from where we used to live. The work was hard. The environment for working was shitty, to say the least, and the pay was meager. Still, it provided enough to pay the bills, most of the time, and he was content with his ability to at least provide for us. Mom was a drunk. She didn't do much but lay around watching whatever shows she could get in clear enough to watch on our small 13-inch set in the living room. All that woman did was drink and cheat on my father. Dad had told me in my teenage years that he mostly stayed for me. This made me feel somewhat guilty for contributing to his situation, but he insisted he wouldn't ever have it any other way. Dad didn't always want to work at the packing plant. In fact, my father had a strong desire to be a police officer. By the time he got home from work, Mom was either trashed on gin, passed out and unwakeable, so he and I would sit and watch these awesome detective shows and movies. Man, I don't think we ever missed a single one. We'd be enthralled by the captivating stories and exhilarated by assisting the on-screen detective with deducing who the perpetrator may be. Dad told me that he couldn't get into the police force due to some kind of medical complication, making it impossible for him to pursue his dream. I wanted so much to make him proud my whole life. Dad passed away when I was 19. I was off to college for criminal justice when I received word that he had suffered a heart attack. Mom pretended to be sad at the funeral, but I know she was just pretending because she was back out on the dating horse, hitting the bars every night with the money she got from Dad's insurance policy within a month of his passing. She never really cared about him or me, but I did. I loved my father. I still do. In fact, much of what I have done or do today is because of him. Because I'm still trying to make him proud. Today, I am a well-respected police detective, but it wasn't easy to get this far. 4 years studying criminal justice, then just to start out as a crossing guard. I had a long way to get to where I am, but that wouldn't stop me then. Just like nothing will stop me short of my aspirations now. When I moved up to beat cop, patrolling a specified region of the city, my progression soon hastened. It was this string of burglaries that helped me to really get things started. We'd been receiving calls about break-in almost every night. This isn't unusual for this part of the country, but the unique part was that some of them portrayed a similar MO. Every window in the home was busted out, all residents having vacated the home prior, and nothing taken. Each one of these particular break-ins had a phrase scribed across the living room wall, painted in what appeared to be blood. The phrase always the same: "You have what I want." At first, with a lack of perceivable victims, the notion of it being blood was strongly contested, but of course, we had the substance tested, and it was in fact blood. Canine blood, to be exact. None of these owners owned a dog, most of them not even a pet, so wherever the blood had been coming from remained a mystery to all of us. This little string of disturbances was successfully hidden from the press, so it really didn't receive too much coverage. I made sure to be in the right place at the right time. I was on patrol late at night, close to 2 a.m. if I remember correctly, looking over at the residents in the poverty-stricken mobile home park on the outskirts of the Eastern District. It would be only moments before I would receive the call. Response time for backup in this neighborhood was relatively poor, and it took over 15 minutes before another squad car would arrive. Once it did, another pulled in right behind it, and then another, and then another. Over the course of a minute or two, 7 patrol cars, lights flashing that signature red and blue, were parked in the drive only meters away, shortly followed by a slick, black SUV with no insignia, blue and red flashing from within the base of the windshield. The detective had arrived as well. The man would eventually become one of my very trusted coworkers. Detective Henry Foreman stepped out of his car, approaching in one of his ridiculously stereotypical full-length trench coats, despite the fact that it was mid-September and a light police flap jacket would do the job just fine. He and the others walked in to discover a scene not one of them was soon to forget. There was blood everywhere, but in jars. What would be cases of them? 2 dead dogs, one long since dead, judging by the state of decay, and there was a fresh kill. On the floor, in between them, was a half-dressed man, a large hunting knife near to his outstretched hand, the blade covered in dripping crimson. I informed the detective, as I had my colleagues, of what had happened, and my subsequent report would corroborate the same. I deliberated that I had seen the man dragging a dog inside his home. He was either acting very intoxicated or somewhat demented, as underscored by the way he was doing it. The animal was seemingly fighting him with all it had. I simply pulled up to ask a few questions. Call it a hunch, but that's what a lot of us go on, and it proves to be a useful tool. I suppose it has its reasons, but as I came to a stop, the man went inside and closed the door. When I approached, I heard a commotion inside, and after several knocks, and what I perceived to be adequate cause due to the disturbing sounds coming from within, I kicked the door open, calling for backup first, of course. The door swung open to reveal the fleshy, slashed dog bleeding out in the corner, and before I could make heads or tails of what had been going on, the man stepped out from around the corner of the doorframe, knife in hand. I tried to warn him, but he lunged at me. I didn't have a choice. I fired my sidearm in defense, killing the man before backup had arrived. I ended my report. A few more cases like this, and it wasn't long before I was promoted to detective. Man, my dad would be so proud of me. I just know it. But maybe I can go further. Maybe I can even get into the FBI. but it would take a few more notable marks on my portfolio and recommendations to get that far. But I'm working on it. Currently, I've been working with the rest of the force on a set of serial murders committed by an assailant known only as the Fat Cat Killer. No, this guy doesn't kill cats, and no one really knows if he's fat or not. He got his name the way most serial killers do, as an inside joke making its rounds around the precinct. Some of the bodies were discovered on a Tuesday or a Thursday, any old day of the week, but the coroner would report each on being killed X number of hours beforehand, always implicating a Monday as the date of death. Everyone began saying how the killer must really hate Mondays, and when someone said all his kills looked like lasagna, it wasn't long before someone made the Garfield correlation and coined the term Fat Cat Killer. The first one was discovered by a beat cop responding to a 911 call. It was regarded as one of the killer's first kills, as he was sloppy enough to allow the victim to get a call to the police, something that hasn't happened with subsequent victims. But they would be smart to believe that it was somehow all of his plan. Oh well, the cop and lead detective uncovered virtually no clues upon arriving at the scene. It was a woman that called, whispering that someone had just broken into her house. There was a scream, a gunshot, and then silence. The cause of death was discovered to be a single gunshot wound to the head, but this was found only after hours of examination, I would imagine. The victim had been skinned, her eyeballs removed, her tongue severed, and her hands and feet amputated. Each of the body parts was displayed intentionally in an array pattern around the victim. No murder weapon found, no fingerprints, no suspect with any motive. And this is how it has been for the past 2 weeks. Calls keep coming in on a weekly basis about a body discovered, sometimes in their home, sometimes in the woods of the park, some even right out in the open in a back alley, though most of the victims were homeless, accounting for the location of the body. All of the Vics appeared grotesquely mutilated, but I'll never forget that one homeless guy. Man, he'd been worked over that extra mile something fierce. That's the only thing the police got right. The killer must have some kind of personal grudge against poverty. But then again, who doesn't? So it's not like that little tidbit in the profile would get them any further than they already are, and that's not very far, let me tell you. So far, no one has any real leads, and that's a good thing. That leaves me room to deliver the fabricated truth to my superiors. I want my father to be proud of me. I would do anything to make him proud. I'm positive that they won't ever catch me, that they would have done that a long time ago if they were able. It's so easy for a cop to stage the crimes he solves, and it should only take a few more before I have the reputation enough to climb the ranks even further, putting me in a real position of power. Dad would be proud.
Let that be a lesson to you, kiddies. You just can't trust anyone these days. Oops. If tonight's story left you a prisoner of suspense, make sure to tune in again next Saturday as we get closer to stepping through the gates into the month of October. But until then, remember to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.